Thank you to the Northwest African American Museum's African American Cultural Ensemble for that heart-touching rendition of "Oh Freedom" in tribute to Harriet Tubman. Hello, and thank you all for tuning in. Welcome to the Northwest African American Museum's Descendants Series, an afternoon with the great grandniece of Harriet Tubman. I'm Lanisha DeBartolete. We are honoring the most famous woman in our nation's history today. Her life was sacred, filled with an uncompromising faith. We revere, remember, and respect her determination, her integrity, her sacrifices, and her strength of character. Born enslaved but never mastered nearly 200 years ago, around 1822, Harriet Tubman experienced the degrading horrors of slavery and spent her life striving to destroy and demolish it. Philosopher Dr. Cornel West says that Harriet Tubman placed her life and freedom on the line for others time and time again because she loved them. Her life demonstrates for us what love and liberty of soul truly looks like. We are here to learn from her leadership, to pay tribute to her life, and to honor her legacy with her living descendant, Miss Tina Wyatt, who is here with us today. We begin today's program acknowledging that we are on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish people. We also honor the Coast Salish people of this region. We acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral lands of a people who are still here, continuing to honor and bring to light their ancient heritage. We are grateful for our African ancestors who survived the Ma'afa, the Middle Passage, who endured the violence of slavery and the indignity of racial oppression, who had the courage to pack up and head north and west to the Northwest, who blazed trails for us to be here and to be ourselves here. This program is about remembering. We can never forget the pain of the past, the trauma of the trials our ancestors endured, the terror of the racial tyranny. Lonnie Bunch, secretary of the Smithsonian Institution, says, quote, "Not knowing and not remembering the history, legacy, and contemporary meaning of slavery hurts the living and dishonors the millions who experienced the slave trade, survived the institution of slavery, or who fought for the abolition of this great evil," unquote. As we begin this program honoring the sacred life of Harriet Tubman, we call out the names of the ancestors who shared that same spirit of freedom. Those like Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, Gabriel Prosser, Harriet Jacobs, David Walker, Mariah Stewart, those like Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, Marianne Shadd Carey, those like Henry Bibb, William Steele, Josiah Henson, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, Martin Delaney, Henry Highland Garnett, William Wells Brown, and the millions of the unnamed ancestors who yearned and dreamed, prayed and fought for freedom, who never stopped believing in and pursuing life and liberty. Because of them, we are. It is our task as an African American museum to help society remember, to tell and retell the ancestral stories, to preserve the old landmarks, to place education at the center of all we do. So as we make new discoveries about Harriet Tubman today, we invite you to make new discoveries about yourselves, about your own capacities to rise above and to overcome, to build a more beloved community and a more loving humanity. Today's conversation will be moderated by Kiantha Duncan. She is a seasoned leader, a community builder, and a mobilizer. She is president of the Spokane Washington Branch NAACP and has dedicated her career to supporting marginalized and disproportionately impacted communities. She is an influencer, a former newspaper columnist and author. Her passion is to help others actualize their potential, their purpose, and connectedness through the art of conversations. This is why we are grateful that she will lead today's conversation. There will be time during today's program for questions and answers, so please place your questions in the chat during the program. And contact every young person you know right now and have them tune into this program. Thank you all. And now, Ms. Kiantha Duncan and Ms. Tina Wyatt.
Hello. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kiantha, and I would like to welcome you and thank you for tuning in to what I promise to be a soulful conversation in the Descendants Series with the Northwest African American Museum. NAAM's Descendants Series brings living descendants of notable African American civil rights figures and activists to the Pacific Northwest for conversation. Previously, NAAM has featured descendants of iconic figures such as Madam C.J. Walker, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Ida B. Wells. Continuing the series in November of 2021, NAAM will bring Martin Luther King III, the eldest son of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And this will be in commemoration of the 60th anniversary of Dr. King's 1961 historic visit to Seattle. Today, I am honored to share space and time with Miss Tina Wyatt. She is the three-time great niece of one of the most historical figures in American history, Miss Harriet Tubman. Now, if you will join me in welcoming Miss Tina.
Hi, Kiantha. It is
Miss
so nice to be
Tina.
here with you today.
Hello,
And
hello.
hi. And
I'm so happy to see you.
I'm happy to see you as well. And I want to also
Absolutely.
thank you to Lanisha and the Northwest African American Museum for inviting me to do this. I love talking about Aunt Harriet and just love sharing all things about her. And I'll try not to cry because usually that's what I end up doing when I start really thinking about all that she's done and who she is, because I just love her.
Well, I'll tell you, if you do start to cry, please know that I am a part of the band. I'm going to cry with you because that is just how things are. And this is so moving for me to even have the opportunity to talk with you about Aunt Harriet. So, Miss Tina, I'm so glad that you joined us today, but I want to check in with you before we get started to ask, how are you doing? How are you faring in the midst of a pandemic?
Well, thankfully, I mean, we came through it uh, graciously, and praising the Lord because we're Christians and we always get Psalms 91 equipped every day. But we took a little turn and in the end of July, my husband just wanted to see our granddaughter in her championship tournament. And we decided to go and we went to a restaurant. I think that's where we picked it up. And he came down with COVID at that time. But thankfully, praise the Lord that he did not have to end up going into the hospital. But it was rough. And COVID is no joke. It was really rough for him. But
Mhm.
thankfully, he's well now, and I'm more rested now.
Yes.
So
And
yeah.
you all were vaccinated, correct?
Oh yeah, totally, completely vaccinated. But
Okay.
he had a compromise because he's taking medicine for a transplant. So
Okay. Well, I
that
think
was
that
why the
helps our
breakthrough. Yeah.
yeah, that helps our viewers to remember to stay
Right.
masked up and to
Right.
follow their
Yeah.
state guidelines because
Right.
people can still become infected with COVID
Right.
even after they've been vaccinated. So that's so important.
And we wore
Thank you
our
for
masks,
absolutely.
but other people, a lot of in the restaurant especially, they were not. They were
Got it.
not.
Got it. So I am so excited to have this conversation with you. And you and I have spoken a couple times prior to this, so I knew exactly what all of the viewing audience would be in store for today. And they have a treat coming their way because you have so much knowledge and so much information about your family, and you are going to help us understand Harriet, not just from the perspective of the major role she's played in our lives as Americans, as African Americans, but you're going to tell us about her as a woman, as your aunt, as a sister to your mother. So that's going to be exciting for me. When I think about Harriet Tubman, she is, for me, the definition of strength. She is the definition of courage.
Mhm.
And of most recent, this is a new term that's been going around the last couple of years, but she most definitely had Black girl magic. Absolutely had Black girl magic. So let's take our viewers back. At what age were you made aware that you were, in fact, Harriet Tubman's niece?
Well, something I've always known, since the time that I was aware of hearing conversation, and always going to my grandmother's, my grandmother and grandfather's house. Um, my mother is from Auburn, New York, and that's where most of the family lives. And on the maternal side, on her side, and on Harriet, actually, um, well, I'll get into that part later when we talk about the home. But uh, whenever we would go there to visit, and we went every other weekend to visit my grandmother, and then during the summers we were there all the time. But she would always say, "Let's go visit Aunt Harriet. Let's go to the home." And I would always think in my mind, "Well, Aunt Harriet, why are you calling her Aunt Harriet? You don't know her." And things like that. But which I will say later also, that was something that I found out different later on in my life. But yeah, I always knew it from very, very early. My mother called her Aunt Harriet, talked about her in that respect, and she was just real to them,
Mm-hmm,
like she was
mm-hmm,
still alive. So,
mm-hmm,
but yeah, when I was younger, then um, I found out about in school when they started speaking about her. Uh,
mm-hmm,
Heard it then, but I
mm-hmm.
knew then that, oh, that's my ancestor. I didn't know ancestor. I didn't know that word then, but I said, that's my relative. You
That's right.
know,
She belongs to us. So
yeah,
my
yeah.
favorite aunt's name is Joyce, and I can only imagine. I'm always excited to tell people about my auntie Joyce, and
Uh,
so I have nothing compared to my auntie Harriet. That really blows all the other aunties out of the water. So that is super exciting to hear. And one of the things that I talked to folks about ahead of this show was
Mhm.
that they wanted to know about you. So tell
Oh,
us a little bit about you, your story, your history before we get into unpacking everything Harriet Tubman.
ooh. Okay. Well, I am um, a retired registered nurse. Uh, and that's something that I associate with Aunt Harriet, but not at the time. I
Mm,
associated with her in the later years. Uh, Really, that's a connection she and I have. But I always like to help. I guess God put that in my spirit because He gives us all gifts. And I
Absolutely.
had that gift of being a helper, helping to meet other people's needs.
Mm-hmm.
So that was in my heart always. But then I had something else in my heart too that pretty much was first place, and that was art. Um, I always loved to draw. My mother was an artist, and she studied under Birchfield in Buffalo, New York, and so and she did a lot of paintings uh, and things like that. So I share that with her. But I went to school and got my undergrad in and I started out in art right out of high
Mm-hmm.
school.
Mm-hmm.
Did a year, didn't like the program. I was at University of Buffalo, and so I said, well, you know what? I'm gonna make a change. I'm gonna go to my second love, which was nursing. And that was during a time that most of us were not going to college, or we were just starting to the influx uh, in the late 60s, early 70s. And so when I did this, they were always changing the rules, the requirements. It seemed like for us as Black women, there were maybe about, I would say, 5 to 10 of us trying to get into the department at this time, and they kept changing the rules and kept changing the rules. So finally, after a few years, we said, you know what? Every time we come close, oh, you need another one. You need something else. You need another requirement. And I said, I'll be here forever, doing this. And so there were 5 of us really that were close. 4 of us, 3 of us decided we're going to the 3-year school programs. We're going to go to the hospital programs. And another one decided, well, I'm leaving it all together. I'll go into speech pathology. And then the the fifth one decided, I'm staying. I'm gonna push through. And she ended up getting in that following year. But I graduated from 3-year nursing program, and which was a very, very, very good program. I mean, I can't say enough about that. But I did that, and then it wasn't enough though. I saw so much sorrow and grief while I was working, and it was just hard. I couldn't make myself become, uh, I guess, jaded,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to be able to turn off those. You have to be able to have the empathy and those and compassion, but you got to try not to let it really just get into you. And that's what was happening to me. So I said, okay, I need a change here.
So
And
you know that if it was difficult for you back then in the 60s, late 60s,
oh yeah.
it was difficult in the healthcare field, just getting into the field. Can you imagine what the healthcare workers today are experiencing,
Oh
trying
yeah.
to provide care for an entire country and doing so in the middle of a pandemic?
You know what?
This,
During the pandemic, you can ask my husband. I would sit there and I would listen to the nurses, and I would, first of all, I would thank God. Okay, I thank God I'm retired right now, and because I know that if I weren't, I would be there, because I would feel
mm,
like I got to be there with my colleagues. I've got to
mhm,
stay there and help. But I would cry just listening to them, because I knew and understood what they were saying.
mhm,
Because you put yourself out there and you try to give the best care you can, and you don't look at them just as another patient. You think about your own family, and your loved ones, and what you would want for them to have, and how you want things to go for them, and the kind of care you would want them to receive. So you try to give that same kind of care, which is so important, and
mhm,
and try to give them uh, the love, because I worked on a unit, and on that unit, people loved our unit so much. People who had chronic illnesses or terminal illnesses and often came back, they would always request to come back to our unit. So you really got close to a lot of different patients. But when they began to die, you were always in experiencing grief. So I know what they were going through, and what they were saying, because it's hard. You're human, and it's just hard to experience and watch someone so many people just dying one after another. And plus they were tired. I was working during the AIDS epidemic when that came out. And I know how frightening that was for everyone, because you didn't know how it was transmitted, but yet you still had to give quality care, and you had to have compassion, for other people. So
So it sounds like to me you are actually a lot like your aunt, because it was important for her in her time on this earth to take care of people, to make sure that they were safe and healthy, which is similar to what is done in the nursing field.
Yeah.
So this is going to be wonderful to see the parallel between both of your lives.
Yeah.
Now, we know that freeing slaves was the vehicle that was used by Aunt Harriet, and that became a piece of her lifetime work. What I find most important as I was thinking about this is really that she chose during her time to be in partnership with other freedom fighters, with abolitionists, and she worked with them to create a strategy for the people to be freed from plantations. And so that tells us that the work, although we know about her and her life, it really took a system of people and cross-function work to really be able to do what she was able to do. So in that way, I see your aunt also as sort of a strategist. So I see her as a strategist. I see her certainly as an influencer. So although that word wasn't being used then, she certainly was an influencer, where she was able to say information, share information, and get people to rally around her beliefs and her thoughts. I think she was a personal development coach. What do you think about that? Harriet Tubman as a personal development coach. I think she did that because she had to help people believe that there was more, and that they could be free, and that they could get to freedom together. So I think that is very much about personal development.
Well,
You
she had
have
the
some
gift of
slides.
leadership. She had a gift of
Absolutely.
leadership. Yeah.
Absolutely. Leadership. Absolutely. You have some slides that you've prepared for us. And as we move into your presentation, I'd like to invite our viewers to please submit any questions or comments that you have using the chat feature, and we will get to as many of those as possible. So why don't you take us through your slideshow, Ms. Tina?
Okay. Next slide. All right. This slide, this is in Cambridge, Maryland, Dorchester County. And I took this slide, I took this photo on the National Blackwater Refuge, which is it's beautiful. It's near the center where Aunt Harriet's the Underground Railroad Tourist Center is in Cambridge. And you see the marshland and the life that's where they have their habitat and things like that. And so this slide, I show you this because I'm going to relate this to another slide later that's important for you to remember and identify with this, why this is important in what she did later during the war. But this land that's here and around where the center is, the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad Center. It is pretty much untouched from the way it was when she was there. That's why, it is so important for people to go and see it now while they can, before anything changes. But I don't know why it was left untouched like that, but I'm glad that however it happened, because you're able to go out there and able to walk and be able to see what she saw.
And this is
You're,
part of the passage that way that she would have taken?
not necessarily. It may have been, gives you an example
Got it.
of on the plantation, the things that, like when they talk about her doing the muskrat tracks,
Mm-hmm.
of what she had to wade in,
Mm-hmm.
or when they were escaping, being able to, they had to lie during the daytime. They had to hide. They had to travel at night, so they weren't detected. But during the day, they would get into the swamps and lie down in those areas and things like that. So it gives you an example of how,
Mm-hmm.
what people were willing to do in order to be free. And this is an example of what she would have gone through and other people, because when she was in Dorchester County, and she took a lot of people from that area, going towards Delaware and beyond. So this gives you an example of the type of land that is there, and what they had to navigate.
Very good. Thank you.
Next slide. This is, I'm trying to go through, I'm trying to build something here with the way that with the slides that I've chosen, and what I'm trying to let people understand and know about how things progressed. Um, this is the will of Athol Patterson, and he owned Rit, or she was called Harriet, but you'll see in the will it says Ritia, or Ritia. And what it's saying is that he bequeaths Ritia, who is Aunt Harriet's mother, to his granddaughter, and any other children that she were to have. He called it her increase, and they were to stay there, and then they could be manumitted at the age of 45 years old. So they were not to be sold. They were to be manumitted. Next slide. Okay, this is giving you documentation, a part of a part of that increase, which was Araminta Ross, which was Minty, which was Harriet Ross Tubman. Mm-hmm. This is documenting the receipt that was paid to the midwife for the birth of Rit at that time of $2. So as it says here, it says midwives could be paid on the day of service or up to 2 weeks later. But it's very possible, and this was on March 15th, but it's also very possible that it could have been maybe a few days earlier, where Aunt Harriet passed away on March 10th, but she also could have been born on March 10th. Don't know. Next slide, please. This is the general store, and this is where I feel it all began. This is where when you go to this place, it's sitting on a corner kind of, and there's nothing but fields and like that around it, open fields. There's a house on to the right of this, and but this is kind of like sitting off by itself. But this is the store where she was in that day, and an overseer or someone was trying to stop a male enslaved person from leaving. And she was coming through with another person, had a shawl on her head because her hair was, she said, all over her head. and she had just finished doing flax seeds, and it was greasy. So she rubbed her hands through her hair, but then it wasn't good enough as far as she was concerned. You know, she didn't want to go to the store looking with her hair all over her head. So she put this shawl on, and the shawl really helped to protect her a little bit. Because what happened was, next slide, please.
Well, before we go to the next one, let me ask this.
Okay.
So this is the actual general store that you literally walked in. So that's
Yes.
shocking to even see the photo. But can you tell us a little bit about the stature of your aunt? Because I think, you know, when you started to explain the hair, I could see that, but now I want to see, who was she? What did she look like? What was she, a small woman, a large woman? What was she like?
Yeah, she was 5 feet or maybe a little bit shorter. But she was small build, but she was very, very strong, very strong, very strong. And you know, so I guess I don't know. I guess she had reached her height by that time, of being maybe 4'11" or something like that. Because she was this was at a time when she was, I think, 12 or 13 at that time.
Okay.
Yeah. Next
So our
slide,
next
please.
slide is of the inside of the store.
This is the inside of the store. And so behind, you see the stove in the middle, but what you can't see that's behind, like if you're standing right there facing the stove, behind you was the front door.
Okay.
So she says that she was coming into the front door, and the overseer probably was standing over there in the corner, and the guy was, trying to escape out that front door as they were coming in, she and another person. And he was saying, stop that person, stop that person. And she was saying, oh, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not getting in the way. I'm not stopping anybody. And he picked up a 2-pound weight. And I'm looking to see, excuse me, if that 2-pound weight, if I can see it in the store. They have I don't know, I don't think it's the actual 2-pound weight, but they show you maybe a reproduction of it or whatever. It's in the store, but it's heavy. And it's not really real large. I think it's like maybe 4 inches wide, maybe, and maybe about maybe about 5 inches tall, maybe. But it's very heavy. And he picked up the weight, the guy did, the overseer picked up the weight and threw it, trying to knock the person down. But instead of it hitting him, he flew out the door, and it hit on Harriet in the forehead. And it took a piece of the fabric of the shawl that was on her head. It took it and embedded it into her skull. Now, what most people don't understand about those kind of injuries is that the brain itself, this covering you have is called the skull. And then underneath, that's the cranium. The cranium holds the brain. It protects it. It's hard, it protects it. But within the brain, within that bony structure, there's maybe not even a half an inch, I don't think, between it and the bone. So, and you have 3, I think, if I remember correctly, 3 layers. But that's why when people have strokes or whatever what they call a bleed, where you're bleeding from a blood vessel into that cavity, there's no space for it. There's no place for it to go. So it builds up and it creates pressure. And that pressure is on whatever area of the brain that is controlling whatever function of your body. And a lot of times, most times it kills you if you don't get to it in time and relieve it. But it fractured her or cracked her skull, and just knocked her out. And she said that she was out for, I guess, a day or so, and then, but it said that she went back to work. Now, if she went back to work the next day, she said, with blood going down her face, I'm saying, for her to be able to get up and do that is an act of God. But what did it leave her with? It left her with what you would call today narcolepsy, where you'll drop off wherever you are at any moment, at any time, with sleep.
So that was one of the things that has always been covered in all of the movies. And the most recent film that was done, which was an adaptation of Aunt Harriet's life, they talked about that incident happening and how that caused her to have those seizures throughout the rest of her life. But I want to stop really quickly and just say this. I want our viewers to understand that when she was hit with the 2-pound weight, there was no nurse for her to go to.
No.
There was no doctor. No one cared. No one did anything about it. Her bleeding profusely from the head was not anything that would signal the store owners or the people who were in power to get her some help. And so that, to me, that just helps us to understand, like, she did so much and went through so much even before she started to do the work of helping to free enslaved people.
Right. But that was a part of the whole process of her becoming what she became. God says he has a plan for us all that come into this earth, and a plan that is as good and not one of evil. Of course, we know who is the evil one, that the prince of this world, which is Satan. So he gets in there and perverts everything. And so with this happening with her, though, it was a bad thing that happened. But God took it and said, I'm going to make some good out of this. I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it. And I'm going to use it so that she can help to free the people that are enslaved, that I don't want them to be enslaved anymore.
Which, let me tell you, that's also right up my line of thinking, that folks, and I've talked about this in other contexts, but people who have experienced, a high level of trauma of some sort really can be the very people who help to shift the world, who help to do amazing things that help people based on what they get as a result of that trauma. Now, not everybody taps into that, but certainly Aunt Harriet did tap into that.
Well, yeah, it's up to us, because you're saying that she did talk about how God came to her in a vision 3 times, and he said, Harriet, I want you, and told her what he wanted her to do. And she said, no, Lord, you don't want me. Go away, Lord. And so she said, he came back again, said the same thing. And she said, no, Lord, she started going that litany of why I'm not worthy, why I shouldn't be able to do this. I'm enslaved. What can I do? I can't help. I can't read. I can't write, and all those things. And so he said, no, Harriet, I want you. He came back again and said, no, Harriet, I want you. So that time she just said, okay, Lord, I'm your willing vessel. I'll do what you want.
So let's also, right here is a place, again, I want to make sure that we are helping people to see who she was as a person. So you talk a lot about your faith and your spiritual beliefs. Those are beliefs that were shared by your Aunt Harriet based on your upbringing and your family's upbringing in the African American Methodist Church, correct? Episcopal. Okay, very good. So tell us a little bit about that. Okay, tell us about that.
Well, in Auburn, when Aunt Harriet went, to make her home there, initially she went to another church of another denomination. But then Not long after that, when she got married to Nelson Davis, I guess, or he was going to the AME Zion Church or whatever, and she also started attending there, and it's and the church that we continued in, that everybody, a part of our family that went, um, was on Parker Street. It's called Thompson Memorial AME Zion, and it's under renovation now. But we all attended that church, um, and we were all a part of that organization. And if you go back in the history to find out about how it got started and everything, I mean, I remember my history correctly about it. Varick was the person who started that part of the AME Zion, because I grew up in it, and the AME Zion Church was I mean, they were very good about telling us our history. I mean, in any church I went to in Buffalo, if I went, we all knew each other and we associated with one another. Didn't matter which church you were going to visit or what was happening. Everybody, it was all about African American history, what, to teach you. And so it was good about that. Then we had the youth conference that we always took part of at Easter time, and then in the summertime. They had a big conference always. And so, there are a lot of things, and the church has a lot of big outreach. They have missionaries in Africa. They also have a college in South Carolina. I think it's in South Carolina. I think it's, if I remember correctly, Livingston, in Salisbury, South Carolina, I think it is. But they're very active in a lot of things, but they own Aunt Harriet's property. And she willed the property. Let's see what the property that is on it, that all the different buildings stand on. She willed that property to them because she could not keep up the payments and things like that, from what I understand. But
let's go to the next slide.
Okay. All right. This slide, it is $300 reward. And what it's talking about is her escaping. But this was the first time with her brothers. And so then this is the one thing about in Maryland, I said, how foolish could they be, to allow their enslaved people to go work on other plantations or work for, other areas. Because she thought that, is it possible that they could just still be working? They would be gone for 2-3 weeks at a time. And it wasn't uncommon. Of course, they had to give money to the plantation owner. They didn't just allow them to do it and keep that money. They could have some of it, but a lot of it went back to the plantation owner. So anyways, Brodus, who was the husband of Eliza, had passed away. And remember when I talked about that, I showed you that will where it said they were supposed to be manumitted at age 45. Yes. He began selling off the children. And he wasn't supposed to. And the first two to go, I think, was Lina, and then my great grandmother, who was Soph Ross. And even though she was married and had a child at the time, they sold her off deep south. And
Here's what's also fascinating about that is, so when I was thinking about the context of our conversation, and most people think about Harriet Tubman from, that she was an African American mogul or big figure in our lives, but her story actually tells a lot about the story of America, period. And so, like you said, there was this agreement that her lineage was not supposed to be sold off, but in fact, it was sold off.
Yeah.
And then here you can see this is a local newspaper. So, imagine any local newspaper in any city, USA, and the newspaper has this advertisement saying $300 to bring them back.
Now,
That's American history.
This paper is actually the actual paper from that time period. The store that I showed you, Jay Meredith is the proprietor. It was owned by his ancestors.
Got it.
At the time. And I think he's 3 times great, I think, if I remember correctly. But he said he found it in a dumpster. Wow. The actual newspaper. So he had it in his store. And so I took a photograph of it. But yes, it describes who they were, what they look like. And during that time, they got afraid and wanted to go back. Now, she saw the devastation that occurred when Lina and Soph were sold off. And she also knew that how she was being thought of as being, even though she was strong, she was thought of as, because she had those, I guess they wanted to call it a sleeping sickness where she would drop off. They looked at as being weak. And so he wanted to get rid of her quick. And
there was never a reconnection with her and Soph, who would be your great grandmother.
No, they were sold. I think the first mention was Georgia or something like that, but then they said they were, it went further south. But all the enslaved people knew, especially in Maryland, I guess, that if you get sold further south, you are never heard of again. Because it's horrendous anywhere, but it's really horrible. But yeah, so when they came back, and this was October 3rd, 1849, when she put this notice out.
October 3rd, 1849. Okay.
Wow. And but I think that was, it was 1849, yeah. And but when they came back, because she didn't want to come back, but she went along with them and came back. It wasn't long before she took off again. I think it was maybe a week or a couple of weeks. And that's when she was successful. She went alone and made her way to freedom.
Very good. Let's see the next slide.
And this is her. That would be her after she self-liberated herself. So just giving you an example what she looked like. She took this picture at a professional photographer studio in Auburn. Next slide.
Very good.
Okay, this is not Cambridge, Maryland. This is not Dorchester County. This is Beaufort, South Carolina. And this is where Aunt Harriet started her war service. And if you see how similar the landscape is, that is another reason why she was so successful, because she knew the lay of the land. She knew how to navigate this type of landscape. It's so similar to that's in Cambridge and what she was used to.
Okay.
Next slide, please. this is, I'm not going to go through all about, talking about her war service. But because I want to get to the other part, which I feel like she was, had some redemption. And this is where she required payment. She wanted payment, back pay for her service during the war. And if your viewers can read it, can see it, what it says is that for services as scouts in military department of South Carolina from 25th May 1862 to 31 January 1865. And she said 32 and a half months at $30 per month, $966. Less pay received $200. It was $766 total. Now that $200 payment is the only thing she ever received. Plus she did get $100 later during from what I understand, during the at the time of the raid. But this $200 that she received, she did not use it for herself, because you were talking about all the adjectives and everything about who she was and what she did and everything. I mean, the things, she was a pharmacist, she was a nurse, she was a doctor, she was a marketing pro, she was an entrepreneur.
She was Black Girl Magic. She was Black Girl Magic. That's what that is.
I Harry had it going on. This lady, if you read some of the accounts about other people, that her contemporaries that gave testimony to her, and I think I read two accounts where her contemporaries said, that she looked to the average person, she looked like she might have been half-witted, not really with it, not there. But they said, if you looked into her eyes,
you could tell.
Oh, they said her eyes were sharp. You saw something different in those eyes. And that's the thing. Aunt Harriet could not read, she could not write, but she was so intelligent. And like you said, she was a strategist. Oh, she, during that Combahee River raid, the information that she was able to get from being a scout and a spy, she took that information, gathered that information, and then what she did with that, and she analyzed it, and then she made a plan of this is what I think needs to happen based upon all that. That's strategy.
That is a strategist. That is a strategist. Absolutely. Another thing I want us to be mindful of too is that so she received $200. That was her pay, for the service for those years that she served.
Well, that was in the beginning, that when she got
in the beginning.
Yeah.
Because we get to a few slides down, we're going to talk about how much she ended up getting as sort of her retirement sort of pay. But so for $200, that was less than the amount of money being paid for her capture in the newspaper, because that was $300. And so her service, based on how they evaluated, her service, it was worth less than it was to capture her and keep her enslaved. That's fascinating.
But the other thing to that is also that $200, like I was saying about, she took that money and she set up a wash house. She set up a field kitchen, and she did this to teach the newly freed women how to use those same skills that they had on the plantation, how to take those same skills, transfer them so that they could use them in order to make money for themselves, to be able to set up their own businesses. so that they didn't have to rely on anyone else.
Very good.
To support themselves. So, you know, she had the rights. They treated her with the rights that a officer would get. She had that. She had those different avenues in order to be able to navigate as an officer would while she was there. Yeah.
So I'd like us to go through the next few slides because we want to make sure that we give those who are viewing the show an opportunity to submit their questions. I know they're going to have so many questions for you. So I want to make sure we get to that.
Okay. You know, she got a lot of, when she was after, I didn't put the petition for her pension in here. I didn't show that, but that occurred before this, what you're seeing. And this was another letter that was written, and she got many letters that were written in support of her work and what she did, what she actually did. Because when Aunt Harriet went down to Beaufort, South Carolina, she did it at the bequest of the governor of Massachusetts, John Andrews, who asked her to go down and to be a scout and a spy and to do anything else that was necessary when she wasn't doing that. So that meant she would be doing her nursing when she wasn't doing that. But there are many things, many letters showing you in support of, oh yeah, I saw Harriet here with a gang of scouts, you know, that she was commanding over them and things like this. So what this is showing here is he's just showing you that supporting her in knowing her character, what she did during the war, and what he felt like that she was entitled to. The same thing, and what she was asking for, because they did not want to recognize her service in the war at all. They did not want to recognize it. And
that again is American history.
But we're gonna get to that part a little bit later. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is a bill that was introduced, and this is called HR 4982, and you can see when you read it what the bill is about, and it was put forth before in Congress to support her getting a pension in the service, not as, you know, what she was really there for, but as a nurse, you know, because you know that women weren't allowed in the military at all. So, but there are other women that have done other things in the Civil War to help to win the war. So, but you know, they did not want to recognize that at all. And then the other thing we have to remember is that Aunt Harriet, as far as the law was concerned, she was a fugitive. She had a bounty on her head. So when she said, yes, I will go down there and I would do this, she took herself out of the area that was free and placed herself back in harm's way. Now you got to really think about, why would she do this? Why would she do this?
Well, not only why would she do it, but would that be a decision that any of us would make in this day and age, you know? we don't spend a lot of time thinking about how we can, well, I shouldn't say we don't. Many people don't spend a lot of time thinking about how they can use their experiences to support the advancement of a whole group. And so for her to do that during a time when she could have, like you said, been captured again and been enslaved and probably treated worse than
Well,
before she left.
what I really think is because, she took so much from their ability to make money, and made such fools of everybody constantly, because she would be standing right in front of them and they wouldn't even know who she was,
Wow.
because she could really change her appearance. And she was a good actress too. So,
Got it.
it made fools of them. So I think that they would probably torture her first, and then they would have killed her. That's what I think would have happened. But this is a bill introduced to give her a pension of $25 per month, increasing it from the $8 that she was already receiving as a pension, as a widow's pension, because she married a second time. That was Nelson Davis,
Right.
and he was a United States colored troop, and he served for, I think, 3 years or something. I think 3 years. And so she married him. He was 20 years her junior, about that. And so when he passed away, they passed that law. I think, I can't remember exactly the date, but they passed that law to say that, if you were a widow, that you would be able to get that money, get a pension from that. So she was receiving that as his widow, still not receiving anything as a scout, still not receiving anything as a spy, still not receiving anything as a nurse. So they took this bill, and next slide, please.
And the difference between
let's go back, please.
Yeah, the difference between an $8 pension and a $25 pension a month is life-changing.
Right.
That's life-changing.
Right. But what happened was, they eventually, after this bill was done, they did change it. I think it was either Congress or Senate said, no, we're not going to take it to 25, but we'll increase her to 20. We'll do it to $20. So, and that is because, and this is the reason why they said it. They said because other nurses, other people that had served in the Civil War as nurses were getting pensions, and they weren't getting any more than $12. So if they were to increase her to 25, that would be opening up a can of worms for them. And they would have to go back and probably increase everybody else's. And they weren't doing that. So they said, okay, they committed to giving her an increase to 20. But that was as a nurse. Now they said, oh, we're still recognizing her personal, all the personal things that she did, but in the act that is documented, it says as a nurse. It says nothing about scout, spy, or anything else. It just says nurse.
Got it.
So
okay.
This is where it's left for the rest of her life.
Okay.
It's at $20 as a nurse. Next slide, please. This is her brick home. There are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 outbuildings, if I'm remembering, on her property. This is the brick house where she stayed, where she lived, and everybody else lived. Then there's the white building, and that's where the people that were indigents and homeless and things like that, that's where they lived. And then if you're standing on the property, behind this building is a gray barn. And you'll see a picture of her sometimes with her husband, Nelson Davis, and her adopted daughter, I think is Gertie, is on there. And another older woman and a child, that shows she's standing in front of the barn with a pail. And so that's the barn that's right behind this to the left. And then if you go way back beyond that, you'll see a grove of trees. Behind that grove of trees is another building. And I think it's in the next slide. If you go to the next slide. No. Okay, this is John Brown. John Brown, I put him here first because the name of the building that you're going to see that's behind those grove of trees was named in his honor.
Okay.
Because Aunt Harriet really, they thought a lot about each other. He called her General Tubman the first time he saw her.
Because he understood.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And they both were connected faith-wise as well, you know. So the next slide, please. This is the John, what we always called it the John Brown home when I was growing up. You know, that's what my grandmother called the John Brown home. And but this is where I think she passed away here in this home, because it was for the people who were elderly and sick. And she went through a lot to try to get this property and this morgue and this building, because that was one of the things that she, in her heart, after she did the things that God asked of her to do, because she did the freeing of the enslaved in, early, and then she went on to the war and freed more, approximately around 750. So after that, she was getting older, and after she left the war, she started doing more social type work, where she was helping the people who were newly freed. She was helping the orphans, and she was doing things to help the community to come together to be able to thrive, not just survive, but to thrive.
So that is a fact that I don't think I've heard anywhere else in any conversation about Harriet Tubman, about her work as a community activist and a community builder. I've never heard that mentioned before. Yeah. So that is really good to know.
That's what she did afterwards. I mean, that was the reason for her. That was the reason why she got more property. She had a vision of what she wanted to happen and what she wanted to do. She wanted to provide a place for people to be able to live with dignity. People that, because she saw after the war what happened, people, their loved ones were sold away from them. I mean, and she was, her loved ones, being one of them being my great grandmother that was sold away from her. And she left my great grandmother, who was an infant at the time, when she was sold off. So it's things like that, people like that, who the families are broken. And you often heard before, I know as I was growing up, I would constantly hear those kinds of remarks about Black people. Oh, Black people don't know how to love. Black people don't care about family, and things like that. And that was so far from the truth. Your families were stolen from you. You were separated from your families.
And probably often felt helpless, rendered helpless.
Of course.
Because you can't go and find them. You don't have resources. Yeah.
And people started looking for each other. Yeah. They started looking for each other after, but like it said, if you're sold south, you can pretty much forget it. Okay. But this is, and you'll see Aunt Harriet sitting in the center, well, off center a little bit, but she has the white shawl. She's older. She's maybe like she died in 1913. This is probably around 1910, maybe 1912.
Okay.
And to the left in this photo, standing, the woman standing, the first woman standing in the white shirt, that's my great grandmother.
Wow. So let's go back also, because we talked a little bit about films that have depicted Aunt Harriet's life. And the most recent film, Harriet, showed, there was a scene in the beginning of the film where it showed Harriet's sister, Minty's sister, being sold off. And that sister is your great
There were
grandma.
two. There were two. Lina, who was the oldest, and then Soph. There were two on that wagon.
Okay.
And they were being sold away. And one of them was Soph. Well, that was my great grandmother, who was Aunt Harriet's sister.
Perfect. Let's go to the next slide.
And this is a close-up. And you see that's Aunt Harriet right there in the middle. And then that's my great grandmother standing in the back to your left. And they're in front of the John Brown home.
They look so proud to me, even in their faces and just how their countenance, although they have been experiencing so many things, to be able to still be proud of who you are.
But the thing is, they knew, especially with her, they were overwhelmed with love. And that they were overwhelmed with her love. And her love was the love that God put into her heart.
Got it.
Because he loves us through people.
Wait, now I want you to say that again. Because what now? God loves us through people.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the reason why he puts that love, his love, in our hearts. So we can take that love he puts in our hearts and put and give it to other people, help other people, shower other people, show other people that same love that we come to know.
Very good. Next slide.
This is Anne Marie Ross Stewart Elliott. This is my great grandmother. This is Soph's daughter.
Wow.
Yeah. And she died early. She had 2 children. But she passed away in the late 80s, 1880s.
Okay. Got it. Next slide.
This is my grandmother, and her name is Elida. And this is her son. And that's my uncle Bobby, Robert Morgan Stokes. And she is the daughter of Mary, the one that you saw before, my great grandmother. And you can see how they look similar. Yeah. Yeah, and they're standing in front of my grandmother's home. That's 59 Chapman Avenue. And that's the thing about Auburn and all of everybody. You live, Aunt Harriet lived up on South Street, I think it was. And Chapman Avenue, which was my grandmother's street, my mother's street that she grew up on. All the relatives, they were all on that street, everywhere, all over. And then you go up the hill, and at the top of the hill to the right sat this large Victorian mansion. And I remember it being yellow, I think. But if you make that right, you go down the street, maybe about half a mile. That's Aunt Harriet's property on the left. And then around from there, all the family did not venture off far from her.
Well, it wasn't safe to do so.
Yeah, they stayed close. They stayed close. Yeah.
Okay. Next slide.
Oh, that's so blurry. That's just a close-up of my great grandmother. Then you can go to the next slide. That's my mom.
Wow, she's beautiful.
Yes, she's beautiful. Beautiful inside and out. She's a beautiful woman. And her name was Hazel.
Hazel, very good.
Yeah. All right. Now we get to the reason why I showed you those pictures and the petitions and everything. Because on Harriet, on June 26th, June 25th, of 2021, this was a ceremony where she was inducted into the Military Intelligence Corps Hall of Fame, recognizing her as a spy and a scout.
And this happened in 2021.
Yes, she became a
Wow.
full member of that. So they recognized her. And I wish that oh my goodness, I wish I could read that, what it says, because it talks about being a soldier first, and then being an intelligence officer second, but doing it in such a way that you do it with honor, and you keep yourself hidden so that you can't be detected. I mean, it's just a beautiful, the way they describe it is just so beautiful and so moving.
Well, let me ask you this.
Exemplifies her.
So when you are, because like I said in the beginning, people care about you too. They are very interested about your life and your story and your experience. And so when you are attending events like this, where, this is huge and they are honoring her, what does that feel like for you in real time?
I feel grateful because I'm able to, it's about her legacy. And I felt like I know she probably, I don't know, I think she would, because I read an account where she did say that, and about the war, that it was good to get recognized, to know that they did do something too. She and the other colored troops, United States colored troops. So I think that she would accept it and be honored by it. And it would, for me, for her, is just a matter of, now, Aunt Harriet, you're getting your recognition. What you wanted, you didn't want accolades and everything else poured up on you about this. All you wanted was your pension. You just wanted to be recognized for what you did in the war as a spy and a scout. And they would not do that. So the fact that they gave her this certificate, the fact that they inducted her into this was great. Now there's a story behind this as well, because I didn't even know anything about this military intelligence corps. And I get a letter one year, and that letter says, congratulations that Harriet, I think it said your Aunt Harriet, or either Harriet Tubman, has been inducted as an honorary member, honorary now, into the Military Intelligence Corps Hall of Fame. Of course, I was elated. I jumped for joy. I was so excited. I said, wow, what? So, and after I received that, then I went and I started, well, I don't know anything about this, this organization or anything. So I need to find out what it is. And I went and I looked, and in there, I saw their Hall of Fame wall. And I looked at it, and And of course, I looked at it really closely, and I wanted to see, okay, why wasn't Aunt Harriet on this wall? Why is she just honorary?
Mm-hmm.
And I read the accounts of some of the other people,
Okay.
and there was a woman on there. What was her name? She had an African American person who she had freed. She was a slave, but she freed her. And I can't remember what their both of their names were at this time, but they were on the wall. So I said, well, if they're on the wall, then Aunt Harriet definitely should be on the wall.
At the top of the wall. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not just on the wall, at the top of the wall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I agree with that. And
Very good.
so I contacted the Corps and everything to find out, okay, how was this? Why wasn't she? And so, they said, well, maybe the criteria changed or whatever else. But what it turned out to be eventually, what they said is that, okay, you can write a new narrative to support what you want. If you think that she needs to be a full member, you can write a new narrative to support that.
But even that to me feels a little, I get it, but it still feels a little something, because why do you need to write the narrative? Why was the narrative not written to indicate what really happened?
Well, there was a narrative written, but they looked at that as not being enough.
Okay.
To support it, because who it was that wrote the first one that got her inducted into the Hall of Fame as an honorary member was a retired military woman. Because when things were happening, she looked at it and she said Harriet Tubman had always been a hero to her. We're gonna call Shero, had always been that to her. And she wanted to know, well, why isn't she on there? So she wrote a narrative, putting all the things in it that they said is required. And she did that, but yet it still came back. They voted on it and they voted, well, we'll make her honorary. Because they were always looking for documentation. They wanted a lot of firm documentation. And so when they said that I had a certain amount of time to get a new narrative in to support what I was asking for, and at that time things were going crazy with the last administration, and things were happening and everything. And I'm saying, I came and the Black Lives Matter movement and everything, and I said, you know what? I'm not going to come from the point of view of saying the same thing that was already said, because of giving an account of what she did. I said, because that's already been done. And then, I asked family, I said, if you want to, send in anything, or if you want to give me information to support anything, I said, you're welcome. And so I even told Kate Larson, and so she said that she wanted to do it as well. And so she wrote a letter. So there were 3 letters that were written. Constance Huff, who was the first person to submit an application for her, the first one. And then I wrote one, and Kate also wrote one in support as well. And so that time they made a decision. Yes, we're going to put her in as a full member. And I mean, that was so great for that to happen for her, that she finally got the recognition that she so much deserved. And if you go to the next slide.
So let me ask you a quick question, because you brought up the Black Lives Matter movement, and you were saying as all of that was happening, this was also happening on the other side. What do you think your Aunt Harriet would have had to say about the Black Lives Matter movement?
Well, she was having her Black Lives Matter movement from the time she started
Moving
self-liberating
Black
all the way.
lives. Hmm.
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
oh yeah. I mean, that first and foremost, that's what was on her mind. You know, what's happening for my people. You know, you know, they deserve some dignity. They deserve this. They deserve that. They deserve to be free. You know, and so she would just be out there. She would have been out front, you know, marching and supporting, and doing, um, in support of that and all the
Very
things that
good.
go along with it. She would have done that. So, um, because she was, you know, anytime there was oppression or any type of mistreatment
Hmm.
or unfairness, um, she was at the top of she was at the front. She was
Hmm.
at the front leading because she believed, uh, if you want to see change, you have to start with yourself. And
Absolutely.
that's what she did. She didn't wait on someone else.
Hmm.
She got out there and she started to be the change that she wanted to see. And
I think that's a message. That's a message to everyone today as well. It's, get out there, get out there. You can sit and talk about it from the house, from behind the
yeah,
computer, but
hmm
you can actually also get out there and be a part of
yeah.
what it is you want to see.
And there are many ways that people are. I mean, everybody doesn't have to get out and protest. I mean, because
That's
everybody
right.
can't get out and protest.
That's
But there
right.
are so many ways that you can help change to come.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
many ways. And
Very
sometimes
good.
it is just even on a community level by knowing who your neighbor is, helping your neighbor, uplifting your neighbor when you see that they're in need and things like that. You know, that changes someone's life when you do stuff like that.
And that's all rudimentary for Black communities too.
Yeah.
So, that's how communities were formed. You looked after everyone. You looked after every child. You looked after every elderly person in the community, and that is
Exactly.
how we move forward together. Let's get to our last final slides because I do want to get a few questions in, and we are
Okay.
out of time just about already.
Okay. This is the Knowlton Medal.
Okay.
And this is, I mean, this medal is so, uh you know, oh, this talks about her
Prestigious.
integrity. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
this refers to her integrity, her
Mm-hmm.
moral courage, and her courage just to get out on the battlefield and to put herself out and not and her selflessness, you know. And that's what this medal is all about.
Mm-hmm.
Next slide.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the award itself. And this is based upon, uh, uh, his name was Knowlton, the guy was, and that was
Mm-hmm.
from the Revolutionary War. And he was a part of the military intelligence that
Mm-hmm.
began then.
Got it.
Mhm. And that's it.
Very good. Well,
Mhm.
that has been amazing to hear of Aunt Harriet's life. Can I call her Aunt Harriet too?
Sure.
Okay. Aunt Harriet, to hear of Aunt Harriet's life and to, walk through that process with you and you being directly connected to her. I think that's so special. This Descendants series is beyond. It is just beyond my wildest imagination. And to be able to hear from folks who literally her blood is in your blood, that is really an honor for all of us. And so I appreciate you sharing the things that you shared. I don't see that we have questions in the chat at this moment. They are not sending me the questions. But let me ask this. If we have an opportunity, there will be an brief after show. And so if people are wanting to hop on that and ask their questions there, we can do that as well. We'd like to hear from you. And if there are questions that we cannot get to on today's show, we will make sure that you get those questions. And if you choose to answer them, we would appreciate that. Miss Tina, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much from
you
all
for
the parts of
having
my
me.
heart. Yes, thank you for your willingness to share your aunt with us, with me, and with the viewers, and with the Northwest African American Museum, and the viewers that will view this around the country. As we prepare to close, please enjoy our final musical tribute to Harriet Tubman by NAAM's African American Cultural Ensemble. Then that will be followed by closing remarks from the amazing Lanisha DeBartoleben, President and CEO of the Northwest African American Museum. Thank you. Miss Tina,
Yeah.
can you give us just a couple seconds of your time? Because there actually have been a couple questions submitted, and we think these are important enough that we want you to answer them online so that everybody can share. So the first question was, in your family, so of the lineage that has come since Harriet Tubman, your grandkids, your, the generations even before yours, has there been anyone in your family that has demonstrated those same qualities as Aunt Harriet, and that you guys have said as a family, oh, that's her, that's Aunt Harriet right there? Is there anyone that makes that come to mind for you?
Oh boy. Just like you said, for my connection with her, if you're talking about just my lineage to her, my nursing background and helping in that way. My mother often was the person in our neighborhood who, my mother and my father, but my mother is the lineage, would take the children, the kids whose parents were in need or whatever, and she would take them, and they would come live with us sometimes. And they would give to them and show them the right ways and things to go. They would always help them, even if the parents were really just not appreciative. It didn't matter to them. It was all about the children. So in that way,
Your mom.
that, I guess in my family, it was about the social work, that part of her life that really was done from my great grandmother to my grandmother to my mother and then to me, and then
That's
to
amazing.
other people in our family. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And then our last question before we turn it back over to Lanisha is this. People want to know, is there anything that we can do during this Biden administration to see to it that your aunt's face and likeness remain on the $20 bill? And is there any work we could do around that in terms of organizing?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Petitions. If you're a part of any group, whether it's in church or whatever group organization you're a part of, uh, write letters. Write letters to your representatives, letting them
Okay.
know what you feel about that. Because the thing is that when I look at you know the way it was rolled out to us in President Obama's administration,
Mm-hmm.
it was told to us that it was already prepared and
Mm-hmm.
that it would happen in the following year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that the design was already in place. That's what I understood.
Okay.
And then when the next administration came in, we were told this is not going to happen. It's not going to happen
Okay.
on our time, and it won't happen until 2028. Now, what we're hearing is kind of the same thing, where this is not going to happen till much later because this has to happen with the place. We have to do the design. We have to do this. We have to do that. But all that, according to what we were told prior, that this
Had
was
been done.
done. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
why is that happening now? I was hoping so much because this 2022
Mm-hmm.
is the bicentennial of her birth.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been so wonderful for that to
Yeah.
be in place then.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I know that it's not going to happen, but even to know that we are making progress,
Mm-hmm.
that plate is done. I know there are a lot of things that have to be in place and go along with it, but we need to keep our shoulder to the wheel where that's concerned, and get as many petitions that you can get with people's names on them,
Mm-hmm.
sending it to the White House, sending it to the Treasury,
Mm-hmm.
and more than anything, I think just writing your representative yourself,
Okay. Okay.
and telling them what you want. And if they get overwhelmed with so many, they will understand this is what we want. I know there are a lot of people out there that
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like, many of us that don't feel like this is something that needs to happen. But I feel like, and I understand what they're saying from their point of view, but what they're
Mm-hmm.
not looking at is that why not her?
Mm-hmm.
Look what she
Mm-hmm.
overcame. Look what she contributed to the making of this country. She was a spy, she was a scout. She gave
Mm-hmm.
up her freedom to go back down there, for this to happen. And if you look at all the people that are on the money, those are people that help to create something strong in our country.
Yes.
So why
Yes.
not her? Why
Absolutely.
not her? Look what she
Absolutely.
gave.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that that is a wonderful opportunity for folks who are watching, not just in our state here. I will be contacting my representative, absolutely. But I think those who are watching from around the country, this needs to happen from everywhere, every state, because this is, as you agreed earlier on, this is American history. This is not African American history. This is American history.
Right.
And she, with the help of many other people, we talked about those co-collaborators, but she helped to change the very makeup of our world. And so that is the least that we can do in gratitude for
So
what
if
she
you
gave.
if you look at what we have now, the union that we have now, United States, she helped to preserve that union. That's what
Wow.
she did.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you again. I wanted to make sure we got a few of those questions in. It has been a privilege. Oh my God, a privilege. I probably will be awake for the next 2 days because this is so exciting to me. Lanisha, back to you.
Thank you.
Powerful, absolutely powerful. Thank you, Ms. Wyatt. The family stories and photos you have shared today have made American history real for us in ways that no book ever could do. We thank you for sharing your Aunt Harriet's family testimony of perseverance, of her resistance to oppression, of her creativity, and of her abiding faith. And thank you for telling us about the experiences of her siblings, your other direct ancestors. She is our Shiro, but she is your beloved aunt. And we thank you for sharing these treasured family stories. Thank you, Ms. Wyatt.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Ms. Duncan, for bringing your commitment to truth, to activism, and to community building into today's conversation. We are so grateful for the partnership and the leadership that you and the Spokane Branch NAACP offer to our entire region. Thank you, Ms. Duncan.
You're welcome.
And thank you to NAAM's staff, to NAAM's African American Cultural Ensemble for those 2 musical renditions. Thank you to all of NAAM's supporters, to Town Hall. We thank you all. And thank you, viewers. Thank you for joining us tonight. Please do come back for our upcoming programs, including MLK 60. As Ms. Duncan mentioned at the beginning of the program, this is the 60th anniversary of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s 1961 visit to Seattle. And we will feature in person a keynote from his eldest son, Martin Luther King III. And it will be on November 8th. And during that 3-day commemoration, NAAM will distribute free children's books about Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement. As a part of our Knowledge is Power book giveaway program, we'll hear from local elders who recall Dr. King's Seattle visit, and we'll have a remembrance vigil, and so much more. So you can learn more about that program at naamnw.org. And we welcome you to return back on November 16, when we will be in virtual conversation with historian Dr. Keisha Blaine, author of a book entitled Until I Am Free, Fannie Lou Hamer's Enduring Message to America. And please join us for our next quarterly Descendants series. It will be in February of 2022, and we will feature the descendant of Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington. There is truly something for everyone, always, with the Northwest African American Museum. So be sure to follow us on social media, subscribe, and become a member. Our 3 pillars are to advance justice and equity, to cultivate educational empowerment, and to center and celebrate the Black arts, history, and culture. So as we close, let's continue to use this powerful history of Harriet Tubman's life to heal the wounds of our communities, to sustain hope during hard times, and to be empowered for our own life's journeys. To end tonight's program, NAAM has prepared a remembrance slideshow in tribute to Harriet Tubman and to all of the ancestors who encountered the vileness of slavery. This song is performed by the Aeolians of the historically Black college, Oakwood University of Alabama. Enjoy this closing slideshow. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
There will be